Hello, and welcome to the Logistics Management Podcast Series. My name's Jeff Berman. I'm Group News Editor for Logistics Management Magazine and also the Peerless Media Supply Chain Group. Today, it's a real pleasure to welcome back Ian Jefferies to our podcast. Ian serves as President and CEO of the Washington, D.C.-based Association of American Railroads. Ian started in his role leading the AAR back in January 2019, and prior to that, he served as a Senior Vice President of AAR's Government Affairs, overseeing the development, promotion, and implementation of legislative priorities for the AAR. And prior to joining the AAR, Ian served as a Senior Policy Advisor to the Chairman of the U.S. Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation from 2009 to 2013. Ian, welcome back.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for having me. Great to be on with you again.
Yeah, absolutely. As I had indicated to you a few moments ago before we hit record, I believe this is your fourth or fifth time joining us on the podcast, and we're always happy to have you. So welcome back.
Well, I appreciate it, and I guess we're doing something right to get invited back. So we'll try to keep the streak going today.
Absolutely. So, Ian, we have a lot to cover in a fairly limited amount of time. So let's just get into it here.
Okay.
I saw your release, your press release earlier this week about November volumes. Pretty promising in some respects, especially as it relates to intermodal. Well, let's why don't you shine some light for us on sort of the current state of both rail carload and intermodal volumes, I guess on a year-to-date basis. And then we could talk about where you think things may be heading in 2024. Not asking you to dig into your crystal ball, just based on what you're seeing out there, sort of.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a pretty interesting year traffic-wise overall, kind of meandering along. As you mentioned, intermodal was in a pretty tough spot for a good chunk of the year, but here over the past few weeks, November and continuing here into December, we've actually seen some decent year-over-year growth. I think right now, overall intermodal's down about 6%, but over the year over year, week over week, month over month, you're looking at 8% increases, 4% increases. So hopefully that's a harbinger of things to come. And I know our members are working really hard to continue to pull additional traffic, container traffic onto the rail wherever possible, and maybe we'll get into a little more of those efforts later. But on the carload side, again, it's kind of a mixed bag. We're barely up for the year. Some brighter spots out there. Autos continue to be pretty strong year over year. Coal is, depending on where you are in the country, it's pretty flat overall. Some areas are seeing pretty significant coal movements, other areas less so. Chemicals are doing all right. Ag's been a bit off, but I've heard more recently that grain's starting to move a little more. So hopefully that's an opportunity to see some good volumes, given some of the issues going on in other ag producing, grain producing countries around the world. I think our folks see opportunities there for ag export. But looking into next year, Lord knows I'm not a prognosticator or a predictor or a forecaster. But I think you look at the economy, where the economy is. I think folks kind of have their fingers crossed about the so-called soft landing here, that the Fed might be done raising rates and even start hopefully thinking at some point about going the other direction on rates. We'll see where they go there. The consumer continues to be pretty strong overall. And we've heard, talking to, folks maybe out at the Port of LA Long Beach, other folks in the container consumer space, that inventories are starting to kind of get toward equilibrium. And
Right.
hopefully we'll see some demand increase there, if not in the first half of the year, on the back half of the year. And so I think, railroads are primed, service metrics have improved significantly, and you're seeing just outstanding new service products and partnerships throughout the industry that I think are going to allow our members to really compete strongly for that container traffic and make some inroads maybe that seemed out of reach before.
No, absolutely. And I just wanted to point out, I just wanted to highlight this quick data point from the AAR for our audience addressing November intermodal. It was uh it was up 5% annually. It marked the third annual monthly gain, that is, following 18 consecutive months of declines, and also represented the biggest annual gain in 29 months. So real nice job there. I just wanted to highlight that for our audience. And you had mentioned service, Ian, and it's a nice segue here. Let's talk about sort of the current state of rail service, coupled with how much progress has been made, in your opinion, say going back to the STB hearings, Surface Transportation Board hearings, that is, for those in the audience, back in May 2022. And also, how are current service levels compared to a year ago, do you think? And also, if you don't mind addressing the impact of PSR, or precision scheduled railroading, on service. I know that's a lot there. We can just address them one at a
Sure.
time.
Okay, so let's take a step back and look over to your point where we were in May 2022, and I think everyone can agree that by and large we were not providing a service product that our customers deserve and expect and should be able to rely on. And the board, rightly focused on the challenges we were facing, and there was a variety of contributing factors there. But I try not to look in the rear view mirror any more than I have to, and focus on the here and now and look ahead. And I think what's important is that railroads have shown demonstrable improvement across virtually any service metric. I know different folks look at, kind of choose different metrics to really to own in on how they think service generally is going. But
Mhm.
just kind of the big ones, whether it's dwell, or whether it's velocity, whether it's train miles per or miles per day per car, you've seen really dramatic improvement, and that's across all of our railroads. And so railroads, did quite a bit of hiring coming out of the pandemic, coming out of some challenging years there, to make sure we had the appropriate amount of manpower, especially on our operating crafts, to move the demanded traffic that was out there and do it in a timely manner. That continues in certain areas of the country. As you know, railroads operate, in all types of populations and in some pretty sparsely populated areas.
Mhm.
So there are areas, for example, I know in the Pacific Northwest, hiring efforts still continue. Certain areas on the eastern half of the U.S. So that's kind of a never-ending process. But I think we've really positioned ourselves well to run both, efficient railroads, but also resilient railroads that can ride out the ups and downs. Because I think one thing that we learned is that you got to be prepared for the comeback on traffic. We're going to have our ups and downs, we're going to have our downswings, but you don't want to miss the opportunity to win volume when it's available. And so I think all the railroads have made taken that to heart, and made appropriate adjustments into their operating plans, into their hiring and their headcount estimates, and also just working very closely with customers to really understand what the customers are seeing and what they're expecting too, so you can plan appropriately and be there to provide that service that we can all be proud of and that our customers expect.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So let's shift gears to the workforce, and by workforce, I'm talking specifically about last year's big contract negotiations.
Mhm.
It was just over a year ago that sort of everything kind of reached a resolution, if you will. And
Right.
I'm wondering, do you think that things are in a better place since then? And also, how do you think the next round plays out when we get there? Do you think it'll be a bit cleaner, if you will?
Sure, that's a really good question. No doubt about it. It's no secret that the last round was very, very challenging, and there were a lot of contributing factors there, unique factors, I think. Obviously, having a global pandemic shortly after the round started, one really delayed the opportunity for our unions and our management negotiators to really sit down and try to make some headway. We then the pandemic happened, and that put a stress on the whole system, and certainly a stress on our craft employees, who did a phenomenal job of delivering for customers and communities throughout the pandemic and doing it safely, as they do every single day. And that's something that we should be thankful for, and we should certainly recognize them for every opportunity we have. But the round, we did reach a resolution just almost exactly a year ago. It was mid-December of 2022.
Yep.
But at the end of that round, we made very clear that we understood there were some issues left unresolved. Let's not blow by the fact that the agreement that was finalized last year was probably the strongest agreement for our employees in over 5 decades.
Mhm.
When you look at the salary increases, you look at the continuance of best-in-class healthcare, you look at some of the opportunities to create more scheduled environment for our operating crafts. But there were some other issues out there, as we know, and railroads continued those discussions on property locally with their unions, and we've seen quite a bit of progress, quite a bit of development. On the sick leave side, virtually every railroad has sick leave agreements in some way, shape, or form with virtually every one of their unions. I think we're over 50 agreements in the past, call it 10 months. And then you've seen, again, on the local side, scheduling agreements with the operating crafts so that our engineers and conductors have schedules that they can plan their lives around. So they're available for work a set number of days, and then they're off a set number of days following that. And that, I think, that was a necessity to meet the work-life balance desires our employees have, and meet the kind of the workers' needs and priorities. And so I'm really pleased with the progress that's happened there. So fast forward, while we just wrapped that one up a year ago, it's less than a year until the next round opens up. Next November, Section 6 notices, which are kind of the formal beginning of a new round, will be served from both sides, and both sides will lay out what they're looking to accomplish in the next round. But I don't think you'll have folks just sitting on their hands until that time. I think conversations are continuing in earnest. Communication is continuing in earnest, because both sides. The last round took a big toll on both sides, and I think you asked, will the next round be cleaner? I think that there's every opportunity to maximize the likelihood of that, and that
Okay.
communication will start in earnest to try to achieve that goal. Because our
Right.
folks, we don't want this dragging out for several years again.
No, absolutely. So looking at safety, I know the last time you came on the podcast, which I believe was in April, so it really was not long at all after the Norfolk Southern derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. Um, obviously a lot of attention was given to the topic of freight railroad safety, especially in the mainstream media, to varying degrees. And then at the Rail Trends conference last month in New York, the topic of the Railway Safety Act of 2023 came up. And I'm not going to paraphrase what you said at the conference, but in short, you indicated that it could be viewed as sort of an imperfect piece of legislation at the moment.
Right.
And I just wanted to get your take sort of on how things have, what has sort of been the industry mindset going back to February in East Palestine, and also just the legislation itself. What is needed to push this bill to the finish line? What is it lacking at this point that you really need to see in order for the industry to move forward on it?
Yeah, Jeff, that's a really good question. I think to start, we should always remind ourselves and remind the listening audience that without a doubt, the data purely show that railroads are the absolute safest by leaps and bounds ways to move products of any kind, especially hazmat, overland across the U.S. Period. Railroads are a very safe way to move goods. At the same time, we've seen that, and the East Palestine incident is a prime example that even one incident can have a dramatic impact on the communities in which we operate. So we've got to look for ways to increase safety every single day. And so you're right. There's pending legislation in the Senate, and I certainly don't fault the delegation who's leading this, the Ohio delegation in this state, in this instance, to want to be active and look for ways to improve safety. And certainly that's something conceptually I think that we all can support. And I think there's absolutely an opportunity for a consensus piece of legislation that all stakeholders can support moving through Congress and perhaps eventually getting to the president's desk. And how would you achieve that? You'd achieve that by targeting legislation on known issues that have developed around the incident that the legislation purports to respond to. A key piece of that, of course, is the NTSB investigation that is ongoing. We don't have that final report yet.
Hmm.
And those folks are the experts. We need to give them the appropriate time to do their jobs and see what we can learn and what might make sense to be done. But there are some key issues I think that we're supportive of in that bill, making sure first responders have the information they need to respond safely in the rare event that a hazmat incident does occur. Um, Providing some kind of nexus around the vast network of wayside detection across the nation's rail network. And I'll remind you that the network of wayside detectors, including hot box detectors, but myriad other types of detection systems, have all been developed voluntarily and deployed and invested in by the railroads because we identified and developed a data-driven safety case that they would improve safety, and so we've done that over decades, and that's without regulation, that's without legislation. But where the bill might run into some challenges are issues that have found their way in that don't have any nexus to this incident. So I know you and I know our listeners won't be surprised that we have significant concerns about a permanent mandate to have two individuals located in the cab of a locomotive at all times. There is no nexus to the East Palestine incident, which had three in the locomotive at that time. We currently have most passenger rail and several short lines and most, frankly, train operations around other parts of the world, including Europe, safely operate with one individual in the cab of a locomotive. Train crew staffing has always been an issue of collective bargaining. That's where it belongs. And, we used to have five in the cab of a locomotive. Right now we have two. Over time, during that evolution, the railroads have gotten significantly safer. And we believe that bargaining is the place to be there. And so, follow the data. As a colleague of mine once said, the data will set you free. We just think
Yes.
that, data-driven safety improvements are the way to go. And so there's some further improvements that need to be made to the legislation in the Senate, and we will continue to look for opportunities to talk about those wherever we can. But at the end of the day, we want to be a productive partner in the process, and we'll continue to work to do that.
Okay, great, great. Let's touch upon reciprocal switching for a moment, Ian. Back in September, the Surface Transportation Board rolled out its notice of proposed rulemaking for reciprocal switching. At Rail Trends, our friend Tony Hatch observed that a key difference between this NPRM and previous proposals is that it's service-based as opposed to being mileage-based. And
Right.
you had mentioned it at Rail Trends that you thought the STB had made the right move in abandoning the initial 2016 reciprocal switching proposal, which AAR has viewed as a backdoor rate regulation without justification, while shifting to what you called a conduct-based proposal based on service. So, what happens now with this effort? It seems like there's more buy-in than there previously was, going back to the 2016 proposal, right?
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head. The board should be credited, and it did the right thing by throwing out that 2016 proposal. There was a robust record really developed that pointed out all the flaws in that approach. And I think the board rightly took a look at it and said this isn't the way forward. And I know our friend Tony called it a wicked curveball with the new
Yes.
proposal. But I'll be honest, anyone who's paying attention during the past few years, whether it's at SDB hearings or in speeches or other outlets, should not have been terribly surprised that the board took a service or conduct-based approach here. I think that's kind of where the questions and the comments from many board members over the past few years were owning in on. And so, conceptually, obviously, we want to provide good service. The board wants us to provide good service. Our customers certainly want us to provide good service. And so, this rule is it's an approach to provide a remedy where a railroad is not providing good service for reasons within its own power. And of course, the devil's going to be in the details, and whether what the right metrics are and what shouldn't be included as a potential avenue for a switch. But I think it was really important for us in the industry, one, to recognize the board's wise move to get rid of the 2016 proposal, but also to approach the new rule, the new proposal, in a way that if we see areas that we think might not make sense in the rule, we wanted to provide a solution to identify what we saw as a challenge to really try to improve the end product, to create a paradigm that works for all parties and works efficiently. And so, the process is we file comments, and reply comments are due here near the end of December. And the board's going to have to sift through a whole lot of material. I have no doubt about that. But the chair really deserves a lot of credit for, I think, bending over backwards, most likely to keep everybody on board and get a 5-0 decision. And I know that'll be his goal moving forward. And so we'll see where we land there. But as I said, devil's in the details, but the board, made a really good, wise move by taking things in a new direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's stick with the topic of the board, the STB, for a moment. Chairman Martin Oberman recently announced that he will not be seeking another term. Obviously, since he's been the face of the STB, he's been very front and center, and not afraid to sort of, speak his mind about different things going on within the freight railroad sector and things he wants to see happen or oversee, if you will. It's been from my selfish perspective, Martin Oberman is made for great copy. And I just was curious, about what you thought about his tenure overall, what happens next at the STB, and then as sort of a follow-up, Ian, what would you view as maybe the top policy debate at the moment within the freight railroad sector? They're sort of separate questions, but a bit intertwined, a bit related, I guess.
Yeah. Look, the chair, I think you're right. He is. There's never been any sort of doubt about what his views are. He's been very outspoken. The board has been the most active of probably any board and since its inception. And I think the chair, I think Marty rightly understands that sometimes the power of the speech or the power of a letter can get you more impact and maybe get quicker impact than the going through the kind of the slow, arduous regulatory process. And he's used that with aplomb. But I think and I mentioned this in the prior comments that the chair, I think, one, I have no doubt in my mind he wants a thriving, competitive, healthy rail network in the U.S. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for the approach he has taken with his other board members to try to keep everybody on the same page. And honestly, he's, more times than not, he's gotten unanimous decisions. And those where he hasn't, for example, the final offer rate review final rule, that was a 3-2 decision.
Yes.
And I think that demonstrates just how flawed that proposal is, that he couldn't, despite his best efforts, get everybody on the same page. But I think history will show that obviously he made a lot of public statements, and it won't surprise you to hear that I don't see eye to eye with a lot of his views on things, and think some of his statements have been misguided. And but on the flip side, when it comes down to policy, I think he deserves credit for building consensus, and I think that's good for the board. I think it's good for those who, for the regulated community and all stakeholders. And so you mentioned kind of the biggest rail policy debate over involving the STB right now, I think there's a few. One, switching obviously is front and center.
Yes.
And that's going to take up just the lion's share, I think, of attention, the board's attention here in the first quarter of next year. I mentioned the final offer rate review. At the time it was issued, we said it was fatally flawed to the extent we actually thought it was unconstitutional. We're litigating that, and litigation is ongoing here. Arguments occurring here in the next few weeks as the year winds down. We feel very good about our case and our points and the data supporting our points, and we'll make the best argument we can that rule should be thrown out. So we'll see where that ends. And then, I think there's a lot of discussion around, the common carrier obligation and what constitutes the common carrier obligation. And that's a really, really, really big public policy question, not only for the railroads, but for other common carriers. And I think there's probably going to be an opportunity to really get into how that's defined and the appropriate way to define it and the appropriate way to interpret it here in the coming years. And, there's a lot of literature out there, but folks are obviously always welcome, and they have the right to take another look. And I think, we might see some of that, and that'll be an interesting one.
Yeah, no question about it. Just in the little time we have left, Ian, I wanted to just touch upon the topic of locomotive emissions regulations,
Yeah.
slash sustainability efforts. What's sort of the current situation there? How do you sort of view the state of things as it relates to that?
Well, I will just start by saying this. If you want to reduce emissions today, take traffic off the highway, put it on the rail, and you'll have a 75% reduction in emissions, period.
Right.
And we're really proud of our environmental record in the industry, and frankly, our environmental impact, or the low environmental impact that freight rail can provide, I think will be an opportunity to gather more traffic, gather new customers who are looking at that as part of their kind of supply chain exposure. The value proposition that railroads provide there is huge. And we shouldn't, we shouldn't take that for granted. You asked about locomotive emissions. The California Air Resources Board is being very active in this space, looking to force a movement to zero emissions locomotives in a short time frame. And look, railroads are all developing, doing significant R&D, getting out into revenue service, whether it's hybrid, battery electric, hydrogen locomotives. And so we're heading that direction over time, but you can't just flip a switch on this stuff. Even if you could, the supplier base is not in a position to provide what would be needed to turn the fleet over in such a short amount of time. And so we strongly don't think that the Air Resources Board, aka CARB, has the legal authority to do what it's trying to do. We're making that case right now. That will be taken up in court, and we'll have our day in court, so to speak, on that. The impact that rule would have on short lines would be a death knell to, I think, upwards of 25% of the short lines operating in California today. And and again, it's kind of missing the forest for the trees, because you're going to end up forcing, like, you close down those short lines. Where's that traffic going to go? It's going to go back on the highways. It's going to result in more emissions. It's going to result in more congestion. So I think we need policymakers to take a little bit of a wider, longer view here. And again, we're not resting on our laurels. We're focused on continuing to reduce our environmental impact, whether it's in the yard or it's out on the rail. It's just got to be done in an achievable manner that doesn't inhibit our ability to operate and serve our customers and provide the value that we do right now.
No, that's great. And so just to wrap up here, Ian, I just wanted to pass the mic to you. And any final thoughts you'd like to close with as we look at the state of freight rail now that we're almost at the end of the year, heading into next year? What are some of the things you'll be focusing on in the year to come, for example?
Yeah, so we'll have a lot of things, and I do want to look at, not only look ahead, but look back a little as well. on the safety side, while legislation is churning its way through Congress potentially, railroads aren't sitting around waiting. We've taken a number of steps over the past 9 months to address things that we saw out of that incident. One, first responders. We've now made available to, I think, 2.3 million first responders our mobile application that allows them to understand what's in trains moving through their communities and respond safely. We've also taken steps as an industry to adopt new standards around thresholds for hot box detectors or trending analyses for when a train should be pulled out of service. My point being, we're not waiting to be told what to do here. When we see an opportunity to make the right move to advance safety, we're going to do it, period. Looking ahead, investment continues to be really strong. The industry, I think every railroad, I believe was up year over year on its CapEx numbers. I think you're going to continue to see robust investment across the network nationally, and that can come in a lot of different ways. But again, we're using our own capital to do that. We're not relying on the government to do that. It's something we're really proud of.
Right.
And I think, you and I heard but rail trends, and we kind of hit on this a little. I think railroads, either on their own or in partnership, are developing really exciting service products that are going to make them that much more competitive about pulling traffic off the highways and growing their intermodal share. And I know that's something everybody wants to see. And I'm really excited about what we're seeing. And I think it's really going to start to bear fruit here over the next year and years to come. You talked about, November being the highest month of intermodal in the past many months. But look, we don't want to get back to where we were in 1819. We want to hit that and then keep on running full speed and
Yes.
take things to new heights. So I'm excited about where we're going and running safe railroads, running efficient railroads, running well-capitalized railroads with motivated, value employees. That's what we're all about, and that's what we're going to keep doing.
That's fantastic. Well, listen, Ian, that brings us to the end of our allotted time for today's podcast. So on behalf of Logistics Management Magazine and the Peerless Media Supply Chain Group, I'd like to offer up a big thanks for joining us once again. I believe it's the 5th time we've had you on. So you're in the driver's seat. You're in the lead for podcast appearances with us. So thanks.
Thank you, and happy holidays to you and all your listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a quick note to the audience, please feel free to go ahead and check out a lot of the great information that the AAR has on its website. It's simply aar.org. And for those of you on Twitter, please feel free to go ahead and give us a follow, simply at logisticsmgmt. And if you're not subscribed to our podcast, please go ahead and do so. Just look for Supply Chain 24/7 wherever you get your podcast. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll catch up with you next time.